All right, everyone, welcome back to Line Your Own Pockets. Today we're going to talk about paper trading. To paper trade, not to paper trade, advantages, disadvantages, how to do it, all that kind of stuff. So let's just jump right into it. How you doing today, Dave?
Good, Michael. I think it's a good topic because it's kind of surprising how strong the feelings are that people have about whether to paper trade or not to paper trade. I hear a lot of people that say they have to have a little bit of money on the line for it to matter to them.
Hmm.
And my feelings have gone back and forth over the years. Um, but I think in general, I highly recommend. And I still do it myself. Um, but the whole point is uh, for a trader to not jump in with 2 feet. So whether that's paper trading or trading small, I think it's really important to test the waters before jumping in with both feet. So that's the whole point here.
So yeah, I don't think we're going to have a lot of disagreement on whether or not to paper trade. And I actually have an example of something that we'll talk about that experiment that I'm doing, dipping my toes back into day trading, that more paper trading would have kind of helped me with. But I'm more interested to hear initially why your opinion had flip flopped so much. I understand. I definitely hear a lot of the same pushback that you have as well, where I'm like, okay, you have a strategy, you tested it, now you should go paper trade it. And the pushback always is it's boring, and you're doing something, especially if you're very discretionary and you have to commit your entire day to watching something that you know has absolutely no chance to benefit you. And then that other one that you already mentioned is super common, where it's like, oh, if I don't have any money on the line, it's going to be easier, right? We always say that you can make a lot more money in sim than you can in real life because you don't have that emotional play. But my argument is always for us kind of systematic traders, it shouldn't matter, right? Like we talked about with all the advanced order types, you kind of set everything out that you want to occur, and then you let that occur. So why has your opinion flip flopped so much over the years when it comes to this?
I think my first time that I started trading a strategy with small size, and then looking at that over time, over a bunch of strategies doing that with, I just noticed that, yeah, maybe I hadn't lost a lot of money at the beginning, but it adds up over time. And those lessons that you learn when you first put money at risk, a lot of those you can learn by paper trading for free. So it's like skipping the tuition part or getting tuition for free, learning all the lessons you need to learn without putting actual money at risk. So, even when I was trading with, trading with really small size, when I was just wanting to test the waters with a strategy, even then it adds up over time in a way that's unnecessary. So I just thought it was pretty inefficient to do it that way.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree there. And I also always talk about this, how strategies kind of degrade as you go from backtest to paper trade into the live environment. And you need to make sure that those things, that you're tracking those things, right? In a backtest, in a perfect world, you're getting perfect fills and there's no human errors, there's no power outages, there's no, right? There's absolutely nothing that can go wrong. And then you go to the paper trading environment and your results you want to test to make sure that they are similar. There may be again some degradation, but if it goes from a profitable strategy in backtest to completely blowing up in paper, then something's gone wrong. And like you mentioned, I'd rather learn that there. Maybe the speed of my strategy was too much. Maybe the fills that the backtests were showing me were going to happen, I couldn't get because spreads were too wide or something like that. And we'll talk about what you should look for in a backtest right in a minute. I think that'd be a good conversation to make sure that you're doing this properly. And then also, kind of like we mentioned, is that um, if you're going to go from that live environment, you want to make sure that if you mess up something, that you mess it up in the paper environment. And that's something that I'll just go through my story now, where I'm taking a prop firm day trading challenge. I'm primarily mostly a swing trader and an investor, and I'll be that way always. But I've been working on some strategies for some time, and I've been working to deploy those. And what had happened was I didn't calculate the maximum. The drawdown was done a little differently. So drawdown in my backtester was done on closed trades, and then drawdown based off of this prop firm, which has a daily stop out limit, is obviously on open trades. And I completely forgot about that, which seems like, something that, duh, right? Someone should figure out. So when I went to the live environment, I found out that I was stopped out a couple days in a row, but yet my paper trader stayed open, and maybe at the end of the day, those positions were under that loss limit or profitable. So these are things that, yes, looking back at it, I'm like, that should be obvious. I should have figured that out already. But if I had just watched the back to or the paper trader a little bit more, then that may have been something that I would have seen and said, yes, although I'm looking at the end of the day and these are profitable, at some point throughout the day, the system would have auto liquidated me, and that would have been the P&L that I got. So those differences, I think, can certainly add up. And that's kind of why I really think you should watch these whole way through, because, again, depending on how you're back testing, it could be this closing data problem or any number. I think this is just a symptom of any number of little tiny problems that could come up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great example of, like you said, there's dozens, more than dozens of things that can come up that you don't even really think about until you trade something real time, even in paper trade mode. I see a lot of data nerds, people who are really good at machine learning, really good with statistics. They live in the world of backtesting, and it's a completely different environment to actually go to trade that or even follow that in real time. Like it's like going from something that's completely static to something that's completely dynamic. So yeah, there's lots of lessons to learn when you do that, and then even when you paper trade, the next step of actually making some small trades in the live market, there's a whole nother set of things that you'll learn by doing that, and they're separate.
Well, and I think a lot of that comes to fills. So this is where, I think if people, we are encouraging people to paper trade their systems before they take them live. I think some things that are important in a paper trader that people should really look out for, and I'll list some, and if I miss any, definitely let me know, is one, it's always going to be, you want the paper trader to give you reasonable fills. And I would look into each paper trader and say, okay, where do you fill me? If you fill me at the last price, that's good. I think bid or ask is probably better. But if you fill me at the last price, that's good. But then also the speed of it. And this is kind of counterintuitive. If I'm working with a paper trader and my fills are absolutely instant, I get more worried than if I put out an order and it takes a second or so to fill, because I've noticed there are some back testers, and shout out to Trade Ideas here, that has that ability where there seems to be a slight lag between hitting the order and getting the fill. And a lot of people would look at that as a bug, and I look at it as a feature, because I'm trying to actually have I'm trying to work out with a weighted vest on. I want things to make it to be as hard as I can then, so that when I go live, there's not that big degradation. Because really, the I would imagine there's going to be more, but the big thing that you want to look at is how realistic are the fills in the backtester versus the live environment. I've got a funny story for this too, where there was, when I was working at the prop firm, they had a simulator, but the simulator there, if you put in a stop loss, it could fill you at any price. And the rule was in the prop firm way back in the day that you had to make a certain amount of money in the simulator before you go to a live account. And they ended up having to fire one guy because as soon as he found this out, he just spent the whole day making, and by the end of the day he had like a some kind of quadrillion-dollar profit that he made, and it broke the system. And the owner of the firm just took him in the back office and said, "Right, you're not serious, get out of here." But that's an extreme example. I don't think there's many like that anymore, but you want to make sure that what you're looking at is at least reasonable to the real market.
Yeah, I never thought about the delay of a paper trader to be an advantage. That's interesting. I never thought about that. Um, yeah, I created the Trade Ideas paper trader, so
Yeah.
uh, I'll take that as a compliment that the the lag that's in there is an advantage. I like that.
Well, yeah, because I'm looking at what's happening in the real world, right? In the real world, I'll get filled quicker, but I don't want my simulated world to be a perfect world. And I think my weighted vest example is a good one. And I used to swim competitively for the longest time, and we would do things where in practice we would weigh ourselves down, right? You'd wear full clothing, you would do things to make things harder so that come race day when you took those off, things felt way
Yeah.
easier. And I think it's better to be weighed down when you're in paper trading. And if it's still profitable, know that you could actually get a bump when you go to the real world as opposed to the other way around. If paper trading is too easy, then you get to the real world, you get slapped in the face. That's certainly not a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like your weighted vest example. I've used a weighted vest. There was at one point I was trying to do as many pull-ups as I could do, trying to max out on that. I was trying to do 50,
Jeez.
and
At once?
yeah, I didn't quite get that high, but I got to 38. But a
Damn.
big reason why I got that high was I used a weighted vest like twice a week when I did them. So, I, gosh, I really like that. Trying to think if there's any other analogies for trading and the I mean the weighted vest. I like that.
Yeah, I think the environment is going to be everything, right? If you, again, the I've seen videos online and I've talked to people where they're showing me things that would have occurred, and then even things like drawdown, like they're seeing a drawdown and back test, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, that was a 35% drawdown, that's fine." It's like, yeah, but feel that, in the moment, I think is way different. And even, if we're talking intraday trading, again, my example of I was looking at it and saying, oh, some days I'll lose maybe $1,000 here or there, scaled at the size it is. Obviously, I can scale it either way, but never thinking about what actually happens intraday that ends up coming back. And these things that, again, you just won't know until you're actually
Yeah,
paper trading, unless your back tester, you printed off a report and it had all of that data set in it. But again, just something I didn't think about until I went live. And yeah, so if I had spent a little bit more time in the paper trader, then it would make sense. And can you stomach, like, I'm looking at the back test, and it's down 5 6 days in a row. Well, A, can I stomach that? And B, will this prop firm kick me out if that occurs? And that's going to change position sizing as well, right? I'm going to have to make sure that whatever the max drawdown is, that I'm well under that limit for taking this challenge. So yeah, just so much you can learn if you just kind of take the time to do some paper trading.
yeah. There's another factor here that I thought about just as you were talking. Um, I think at some point I I recognized that I was too comfortable with drawdowns. I kind of thought I remember thinking that like kind of wearing them as a badge of honor. Hey, I'll get this big drawdown, but I can stomach it.
Hmm.
And I thought that that's not really the way I should be. Like I should be, um, I should never be really comfortable with a drawdown. I should be always more vigilant than I was. And I remember thinking that with, not paper trading, like trading live and suffering some small losses. I thought it was related to that concept I saw in myself, and that's when I started realizing that I could learn a lot more, or I could learn just as much, almost as much, by just paper trading without paying any of that tuition like that I was needlessly paying over time.
Yeah, that becomes a big difference between, I think, real world and fake world. It's very easy to just look at a back test and look at a 20, 30, 40% drawdown, especially when you're in my world of swing trading and you're zoomed out for, a very long period of time. You're doing a back test over 40 years, and you see, there's a 2 year drawdown period, and you're down 30-40% in that period of time. But to actually live through that, right? It becomes very hard to. You have to sit and imagine. Okay, am I okay with 24 months of continuously getting hammered until things recover? I'm sure in future episodes we'll talk about ways to mitigate that, and ways to diversify strategies away from that and that type of thing. But it did it became almost like playing. It's like, oh yeah, but I make this massive percentage gain over these 20 years. I would just have to, for 2007 to 2009, just sit there. And even when I put in things like regime filters that would just keep me out of that market for a period of time, I'm like, well, that could I really just not put on a trade for 2 years? Like, I don't, then what do I do?
Yeah.
Right. So uh, it's, there's going to be another step too when you get to the real world, that I think there's going to be a whole other bunch of things that we can talk about that are different from this. But it's how close can you kind of get to the sun before things get dangerous, right? And I think
Yeah.
paper trading is a good way to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the big reason why when I look at back tests, I look at the equity curve. When you look at just the numbers, you don't see those drawdowns or you can't feel them. And when I look at an equity curve, I know that those dips are what is going to be the painful parts when I trade the strategy. Those are going to be the difficult parts to get through. And that's what I'm looking at. I've just been through it so many times that, and that's where people give up. That's where you give up on the strategy. So that's where you really need to focus and figure out, okay, is this something I can live with? What can I do to minimize this drawdown? What can I do to, uh, or is this something I can live with? And knowing that it's in real life, it's going to be harder than you imagine it to be.
Yeah, because when you're looking at it, you're not going to sleep every night with a negative. You're down from equity highs, and right, having to hang out with your kids and all these type of. Well, when you're in it,
Yeah.
it's part of you. So that's why I'm so excited about this, because just talking about this, and we got a little bit ahead of ourselves there. I'm excited to chat with you about your process there, and how you're going to get around it, and things that you're going to do, because it might be different from what I do, and there may be some ideas that are created throughout. So um, but just to bring it back to the topic, do we have anything else to talk about on the paper trading world, other than gotta find a good one and go do it?
Yeah, I think there's a related topic that's uh, what I like to call pilot trades. So I've done some woodworking in the past, and there's this concept of a pilot hole where if you're getting ready to drive a nail through a board, it's a lot easier to drill a pilot hole first. So it's a smaller hole
Hmm.
that guides the nail. If you're working with hard wood, sometimes you literally can't drive a nail through it without doing a pilot. So I like to call these pilot trades where it's a really, really small amount of money that, even if you had 20 trades that were losing right in a row, you wouldn't bat an eye, it wouldn't really mean anything at all to you. That, going from paper trading to that is really valuable. I like to call it, when you take that step, I like to call it, you're getting feedback from the best traders in the world, because that's really what's happening when
Yep,
you
it's good.
when you first trade a strategy. You will get feedback very quickly from the market. And I was thinking there's probably no other field where you can get that instant feedback so quickly. It's pretty
I
amazing.
Well, and I love that, and that's something that also we we are uniquely able to do now that we couldn't do in the past. Like back in the day, commission costs alone were insane, right? They're just through the roof, wild. But now, when you can pay zero commissions or really, really close You know, I know Interactive Brokers has like a minimum, but it's near nothing anyway. You can do stuff like that where you could take one share if you want it, right? Just go in and take one share of everything in your system and just watch how the fills are and how things work and all of that. I totally agree with that. But back in the day when people were paying $100, 50, $100, I heard a lot of stories of for a trade, that kind of pilot testing wasn't able to be done. So yeah, I think that's the next logical step is first you're getting a paper trader where pretty much nothing's on the line except the cost of the paper trader. And then you're just putting a little bit on the line. You're making sure things kind of line up. And then I always use the example of, you can tell I'm a very example minded person because that's just how my brain works. The whole boiling the frog alive by turning the temperature up slowly. When people come to me and they say, "Oh, I trade really well when I'm only risking, or I'm putting in $1,000 per position, but I want to get to the point where I'm putting in $10,000 per position," that that's a problem. And I say, well, go from 1,000 to 2,000, and then go from 2,000 to 3, right? And if doing it slower makes sense. And I think the same thing with this scenario where there's a lot of people who are anti-systematic trading because they don't trust the system to kind of handle these things for them. That's always what I say. It's like, hey, start with one share. Do that for a couple weeks outside of what you normally do. And then, slowly crank that up in a way that it doesn't bother you. And then hopefully over weeks and months, then you're kind of acclimated and you're trading just like you would, right? With that 10,000 share investment kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, so I think the takeaway here is I understand the feeling that you need to have something at risk for it to matter, but resist that urge and realize that the whole point of paper trading is to learn more about your system, to understand more about how it is going to work, and there's a lot of value and a lot of learning you can do just by paper trading.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks everyone for joining us. From some of the conversations we alluded to that I had to kind of pull back on topic from, I'm excited for where this is going to go because, two nerds talking about this kind of stuff seems rare out there. So I'm excited to that. So, any closing thoughts for the people?
Don't think so. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.